everyone, good afternoon. I'm happy to be back. I made a video last week and it just didn't get past the editing stage, so I might upload it later, but for now I think I'm just gonna try to keep on going and making these updates. So today I have kind of a big update, something that's been on my mind that I want to share with you guys, and I want to share it. I want to put it in a video so I can link back to it when I get questions. So before I talk about what I actually want to talk about, I'm going to give a little backstory on my books and kind of how I got to be doing what I'm doing today. So my husband and I got married in the spring of 2014, and prior to that I had been working part-time. I think I brought home like somewhere between $200 and $300 every other week after taxes, so it really wasn't that much, but to me it felt like a lot because, I don't know, because it was just several $100s coming in constantly, like, I don't know. So, I think I had saved around $6,000 or $7,000 by the time we got married. And then because of the nature of my husband's business, it's very, very seasonal. So, like, we could go, 4 or 5 months without making $1. And so because of the nature of that, we ended up living off of my whatever I had saved up that year, and then at the end of the year we could say, okay, we made this much, so that's what we have to spend, but basically at that point especially, we really didn't know how much we'd have to spend. So here I was married and shopping for the first time for a whole week's worth of groceries, and I think for the first couple months, I think I was spending about $50 a week, and I was like, that's a lot of money to be spending on something we're just eating. So I decided I wanted to see how much I could cut that, and you got to keep in mind so that the cycle of income there had a lot to do, I think, with my mentality of I gotta cut it to as little as I can, just because of that uncertainty of, well, we don't really know how much we're gonna make. So that, and the other thing too is I'm just naturally frugal, and I saw it as a challenge, like, how low can I get this number? And it was kind of fun for me, and it's still very fun for me to do that. So I started trying to get our grocery bill down. And by that fall, I was like, hey, I'm learning so much about menu planning. I've always enjoyed writing. I want to write a book and put it out there just kind of to see what happens. So I wrote The Housewife's Guide to Menu Planning. And it wasn't called that at the time. It's called something else. But what happens inevitably, the problem is books are static. They don't change. But people are dynamic. Like, people change all the time. So what happens inevitably when you write a book, especially nonfiction, a couple weeks, couple months go by and you're like, oh my gosh, I know so much more. I need to redo this book. So anyhow, that was the first edition of that book, and that was the fall after we had gotten married. So I put that book out. It didn't do much. Not surprisingly. I think I had some family and friends buy a copy, but so, that time went by. The next year, I had started kind of hobby farming during that whole year we were married. I put in a garden that was really pathetic, and, I think I did chickens that year. I did meat chickens that year. Yeah, and it wasn't till, I believe, the next fall that I got chickens. So anyways, 2015, I kind of got more into the hobby farming. I did a farmer's market very, very consistently for a whole season. I did baked goods though, because my hobby farm didn't really produce much at that point. I had like a milk cow and toward the end of the summer I had some chickens. So I did the hobby farming. 2015 goes by, and then 2016, the summer of 2016, I was like, man, I am really getting good at this grocery shopping thing. Like, I'm going to write a book about how to save money on groceries, and just put everything I've learned into a book and then put it out there and see what happens. And so I did. I spent probably between July and October writing this book, which was The Housewife's Guide to Frugal Food. And I put it out there, and it was really well received. I had a decent amount of very critical reviews, because it was, some of the things I guess were polarizing. I didn't realize that I didn't realize there was such a big deal about some of this stuff, but anyways, so it was pretty well received, and that's been my best-selling book since then. And it was called The Housewife's Guide to Frugal Food, How to Eat for $10 a Week. And that was our budget, $10 per person per week. And as of now, it's still our budget. So after I released that book, after I put out Frugal Food, I thought, well, I'm going to actually, like, now that I've written the book, I'm going to show people how this is an actual legit thing. Like, how do I do it in real life? So I started recording how much I spent on groceries. I started doing grocery hauls. And I didn't start the grocery hauls until 2017. So that was a little later on, but I started blogging about groceries and stuff right away. And I got pregnant with our little girl. And I was continuing to hobby farm. I did one farmer's market, but by that time I had figured out I didn't really like to do farmer's markets. So the hobby farming had petered out a little bit. I had gotten rid of some of my animals just because it got to a point where it's too big for me to take care of. So I had scaled that down a little bit. And that was before I was pregnant with her. But then I had her in the fall, and from there I was like, well, is this $10 a week thing still going to work? Because, I was a first-time mom and I didn't have anything together really. I had no idea how to get stuff done with this little bundle of, well, but she didn't do anything for the first couple months really, just eat and poop and cry. And so I struggled with that for a little bit, but because after she was born I did add another $10 because I figured if you have small children you're taking care of, even if they're not eating the $10, like, you don't have as much time to spend. So I figured her $10 would be eaten up by convenience foods or, things that I used to make from scratch until I could get to a place where I could do those things from scratch again. And I wondered, because one of the big critiques with my book was that at the time I didn't have any kids. And some people were like, oh, this would never be doable if you have kids. And so I had some of those doubts. Well, later on I found out, and I've told you guys this, what you do is you just buy machines. And you replace that stuff that you used to do by hand with machines, and you can do pretty much everything you did before. And as your kids get older, and I can say this because I came from a large family, but as the kids get older, they can help. So I personally, I don't think it's, I still think it's doable no matter how many, how many kids you have. Now, if you've got like 5 kids under 5, that's probably something different. But for most of us that just have one at a time and, we've got some time on our hands, then it's not a big deal. Anyways, so I did figure out how to stay on that $10 with her for the first, for her first year. And then after that, so this would be like the fall of 2018, I had just put out a book about fruits and vegetables, because that was another thing people were like, well, she just gardens, and so that's how she gets everything for free. So I put out a book about how to save money on fruits and vegetables, and then after that, I was just bored. I was bored with the budget. It had become kind of easy for me because I figured out, like, okay, what staple items do I need to buy when they go on sale? What meals do you make? So it was the end of 2018, and I was bored. I was bored with our budget. I needed a new challenge. So I said, well, I'm going to try to upgrade the quality of our food while keeping the same budget. Maybe we'll do some organics. Maybe we'll do some grass-fed meat. So the first month I did a no spend. I was like, we're going to put this money toward grass-fed beef. So I saved $120. And then the second month, which would have been February, I started buying organic celery and organic tomato products. So that was all well and good. And then in March, I was like, okay, we did that, time for beef, right? So I did some price checking on beef, and I couldn't find anything for less than $6 a pound. And that was actually, I think, either Walmart's price or like straight ground beef from a local producer, but only ground beef, like no other beef, just ground beef. So, which is all we buy now anyway, so it wouldn't have really made a difference. But that $6 a pound is 3 times as much as we pay now. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I either have to cut our meat consumption down by 2/3, or, where is all this extra money coming from? Alright, so I'm gonna back up again. I had mentioned I was doing some homesteading and like hobby farming, and we had butchered all of our own meat. My husband went deer hunting. I did a lot of canning. So there was a lot of hands-on work in that. And it got to a point where I decided I didn't like, I don't mind butchering something larger like a deer, because it takes a day and then you've got a bunch of meat. But the chickens, I'm an awful chicken butcher. Like it took, I think the last 2 we did, it took us, it took 2 people an hour to butcher 2 chickens, 2 roosters that hardly had any meat on them. And I was just like, I'm ready to be done butchering chickens. So somewhere between 2016 and 2018, I stopped butchering chickens, and I was happy to do that. And also my husband decided he didn't like deer hunting. I don't blame him, because I don't really like it either. So we just started buying our meat, and we've been paying about $2 a pound for you know, chicken breasts or ground beef. And also we buy chicken thighs, which are far, far cheaper, but they have the bone, so you've got to deal with that. But anyways, so here I was in March trying to price out ground beef, and I figured if we wanted to do all grass-fed beef, I would at least have to double our current budget. And I was just like, I don't know if I can do that. That's just like a lot of money for one change. But at the same time, the USDA has a food budget plan. You can actually look it up. I'll put a link to it below this video. But the cheapest plan is called the Thrifty Plan, and I plugged in our numbers, my age, my husband's age, and our daughter's age to see kind of what they would recommend spending for a family of our size. And it came out to $103.20 a week, and right now we're spending $30 a week. So in a way, it wouldn't be a big deal to double our budget because we'd still be spending, you know, just a little over half of what the thriftiest people spend according to the government. But at the same time, it's just hard. It was really hard for me to swallow. So then I went back to, well, what if we get a cow and stick it out here in the back too, and like send it to the butchers and do the grass-fed beef that way? And that's still an option, but at this point, we're just not ready for that. We've got a big house project we need to work on, and my husband is still busy with his business, and so it's just not going to happen this year. So, that being said, I was kind of bummed about that, and at the same time, I'm just getting bored. I'm getting bored with the ingredients that I can afford on my self-imposed budget. And here's an example. If you're going to buy pasta on the $10 a week budget, this is what you can afford. And it is 50 cents a box on sale. But this is what you can afford. What you can't do on the $10 a week budget is get this beautiful cheese tortelloni, cheese-filled pasta. You can't buy fresh pasta at Aldi on the $10 a week budget. And we came home from Aldi the other night. I was like, honey, do you think it's time for us to increase our grocery budget? And he said, sure, why not? I said, well, I'm not sure. And he said, what's keeping you from spending more? And I said, well, we're not in debt. We're not really saving for anything. We already bought a house. We have plenty in retirement. And we make enough. I guess the only thing that's keeping me from increasing our grocery budget is I'm afraid that people are going to discredit my book if I don't keep on doing the $10 a week thing. And so there, it's out. Like, I'm being honest with you guys. I am ready to be done with $10 a week. And it's not because it's not doable. It's just that, like, I've been doing this for 5 years, and I'm getting a little tired of cremette pasta, you know, for pasta night. Maybe I want to have something nicer. Maybe we want to spend, you know, double our already tiny budget to get some locally produced things or some organics or, you know, grass-fed stuff. And so it's not like there's not a lot of things you can do with what you can buy, but I mean, if I think about it, there are so many things that I haven't bought very often in the last 5 years. Like, I can't remember the last time I went and bought, you know, a 1 pound bag of nuts, just because that's not really affordable, and I just kind of gotten used to not having nuts with anything. And so in a way, it's nice to have such a small budget because you don't have to choose some things. Like, some things you don't even have to think about buying because you can't afford them anyway. But on the other hand, if you've been working with these same ingredients for years and you just longingly look at the fresh pasta every time you walk by, it's like, I'm just ready to have some, I'm ready to just buy what I want to buy and not have to worry about reporting to you all of what I bought. So the other part of this is, in order to stick to the $10 a week budget, there's certain things you have to do. And I'm okay with doing a lot of those things. I'm okay with making yogurt. I'm okay with making bread and granola. But because of all the cooking from scratch, I'm also doing a lot of dishes. So I spend about the same time doing dishes at this point as I do cooking, and that's keeping me from wanting to do a lot of cooking because I know there's just that drudgery work that follows. And the other things, some of the other things are, like last year, okay, so when we had our daughter, I was worried that I wouldn't have enough time to do, you know, the cooking, and I would be too tired, and you know, after she got to be 6 or 7 months old, it wasn't that big of a deal anymore. But what I realized was my time was split to where I didn't have a lot of Bethany time and a lot of alone time. So I had to pick and choose very carefully what I wanted to do with my Bethany time. And toward the end of the summer, I found myself feeling kind of resentful because I was spending nap times canning, and I really did not want to be canning. I wanted to be like reading a book or writing, blogging, doing something different, you know, instead of canning. So I realized during that year what I did and really didn't care to do so much, and some of the stuff like canning is one of those things. There's just other things I'd rather be doing, and so I know how to do it, and that's worth a lot to me because if I ever have to do it again, or if I want to do it, I can. There's nothing stopping me from doing that. But if I had to pick and choose, you know, between canning and reading or other things that I haven't done for 5 years, like playing instruments. I play guitar and piano, and I really haven't done much in the last 5 years with that. I used to paint with acrylics, and the most painting I've done is those little peg dolls for our daughter, which I love doing, but it's like some of those things that kind of got put on the back burner, and instead I spent all that time canning and stuff. I'm just, because we have the means, I'm ready to do something different now. So that's where, when you give some of these things up, you're just gonna pay more. That's all there is to it. If you don't want to can, you're gonna have to pay for canned goods. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm ready to increase, well, not necessarily ready to increase the budget. I'm just ready to not be so incredibly accountable for my spending. You know, I want to walk into Walmart and buy a bag of nuts or something. And this happens with a lot of bloggers because we're like, oh, we've got this great passion and ideas for frugality and how, you know, being on a budget can actually set you free. Like, it can free up so much money and you can do what you want. So we bloggers are going to show the world how to do this thing that we've already done. And so we do that, but after a while it's like we don't need to be personally doing those things anymore, and we're afraid of losing our credibility if we do something out of character. And it's really, it's really silly because, like I said before, a book is static. A book does not change, but people change, and we have to take that into account. Like, I'm one of those people that, I mean, Enneagram 5 here, like, I focus on a subject, and when I'm done, I move on. I move on. I move on. I'm not, like, I'm just ready for new stuff. And so with that being said, I guess this whole entire video is I'm going to stop, I think, recording my spending on the blog. And I just want you guys all to know why. And why we might not stick to the $10 a week budget anymore. The short answer being, we don't have to. And so, I hope in a way this encourages some of you, like, if you don't like being on being super frugal, at some point you don't have to be anymore. The $10 a week budget at first set me free. It was like, oh great, I don't have to spend $50 a week on food anymore, and we can spend it somewhere else, or it can go toward, you know, paying off our house or something. But at this point, it's more of like, it's more holding me back than anything, because I can't buy the things that I want to buy. So yeah, that's where we're at. I hope you guys understand. I think you will. Alright, so this has been the update with Bethany. I will see you guys at another point in time.